So welcome everybody. I've had the delight of talking to Robert and Megan and Nathan before this, so we had some idea of what we may be talking about, but it'll be interesting to explore this further. What I'm going to do, just to ease everybody in and check all your microphones and everything else, is to just get you to each give a little brief intro in terms of who you are, why you're here, and also what would be a welcoming workplace for you, or what's the most welcoming workplace that you've worked in. So let's start with Robert and then Megan and then Nathan this time, and we'll flip around.
Hi, Robert Scharf. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I've been working in government and IT since the 1980s, and cybersecurity since about 1999 with the Y2K stuff. And what does a welcoming workplace look like to me? One that focuses on people doing what they are passionate about, not for money or prestige, but for a sense of accomplishment, a drive to make a difference. Usually what people are passionate about is what they are gifted at, because it doesn't feel like work to them. And that is what will make your workplace glow. So that's my little bit.
Megan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan. I work as a senior security engineer at IBM. I'm also a diagnosed autistic person, and so I joined this panel in order to share my experiences that I've had over the past several years working in the industry and help bring more inclusivity for autistic and neurodiverse individuals.
And are there any sort of particular workplaces that you would love to be in or have loved?
I love my time here at IBM. My managers are great at adjusting to me, and so I'm happy where I am, and I'm hoping that my future will be as lucky as I am now. So anyone who enables me to love my job.
Fantastic. And Nathan? Nathan, we're not hearing you.
I'm sorry about that. Hi, my name is Nathan. I work at Microsoft. I advocate and I'm an advocate and activist for neurodiversity. For me, a welcoming workplace is one where people are free to be themselves and differences are understood and accepted, whether you're neurodivergent or not, along with flexibility, openness, and trust.
I think we'd all applaud fantastic managers and places you can be yourself, and places where you can, as I mentioned in my talk, do what you do best for the majority of the time. So what I love about that is what we've all said is just exactly what a neurotypical person would say. Would you agree with that? That everybody would kind of, so that really does play to that whole idea that inclusion should be a lot easier than we seem to be making it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So on that basis, what are we finding that's toxic? Should we go the other way around now? And sorry, Megan, you're still in the middle, but we'll start with Nathan.
Thanks. For me, it's the traditional offices. The fact that the traditional offices are not made for neurodivergent people. So accommodations and flexible work conditions are very much needed. Also, managers need better awareness and training. It is like hammering a round peg through a square hole. This doesn't work. So we need flexibility and we need accommodations.
Megan?
Yeah, so kind of on the similar way, flexibility, accommodations. One of the things that I hate to see is companies going with the traditional, this is how it's always been done. The traditional 8 to 5 at a desk, working in procedures that have been around for decades. It just doesn't work for people who think differently. So that flexibility, for me, it's the concept of are you doing your job good? Are you getting the work done? Are you succeeding in the workplace? Not are you adhering to 300-year-old traditions of what a workplace, a full-time job looks like. So adapting for sure.
And Robert, would you agree with that? What would you add?
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen, especially working in government positions over the years, is constantly changing priorities, and a lack of long-term direction, I think, creates a toxic environment that drains energy and morale of the workplace team. Some priorities, I think, should be long-term, which neurodivergent team members should definitely be tasked to, so that they can focus on the tedious tasks that drive them, but may stall others. I've seen where you might get onto a project and you really enjoy the work you're doing. You put a lot of effort into it. You're in the weeds doing all the detailed stuff that a lot of people glaze over, or they don't want to read. They want the quick executive stuff. That's fine for people who just want to do the high level fluffy stuff. But neurodivergent people are highly detailed oriented. They're going to dig deep for the stuff that you may not have noticed. They'll dig deep for the stuff that you may not have asked for, but then realize you need it. And they need constant feedback that the work that they're doing is making a difference, that someone actually looked at it and used it for some other product or paper or report that had to go up to a higher level. These are the jewels of your company that you should strive to find and nurture and figure out what their passion is, and then use that to make you look good. Because there's a lot that neurodivergent gifted people can do. They're not being tapped into. And companies like Microsoft, I think, have a reputation of seeing this. I think they have a higher support program for the autism spectrum. So I've heard, I've never worked for them. But this is the kind of thing that I think a lot of companies can learn from. That once these people get on their stuff and they go crazy with it like a dog with a bone, you're going to get way more detailed information that you ever thought was available. They're going to find things that other people never read. A lot of the research that was done, and people haven't looked at it. It's been sitting on a shelf, and we'll read that. So I think that there's a lot we can learn.
Yeah, what's really interesting, Robert, is my experience would be really similar to your experience, because I'm an autistic as well. But I know a lot of other neurodivergent folks who would definitely not want to be in the weeds and would definitely be more visual, big picture thinkers. So it's the kind of variety of I suppose serving everybody. And Megan and Nathan, one of the kind of things that you were all picking on, in fact, Robert as well. I love the fact that all of us in some way have talked about mermaids being judged on how to climb trees and being forced into this predefined way of working. And even the training sometimes that Nathan mentioned, we can feel alien. I know from experience autistics that have been in training and said, I just wanted to leave because it was so stereotype after stereotype being taught. And I knew that my manager would respond to that in a way that would not be productive for me. And so this whole idea of how we communicate better is something I would love to explore with you all. So, is being treated equally always fair, or should we be striving for something more equitable or much more different? How do we do that in a granular way? And Megan, let's start with you for a change rather than you being in the middle.
Yeah, so like I said, I think it's all about what you talked about in your keynote, that it's not equality, it's equity. So really working within your employees, and like this entire panel, the takeaway should be that this isn't just neurotypicals versus neurodiverse people. Everybody should be treated in a way by their managers that will make them the most productive in their environment. Everyone, not just neurodiverse individuals, thinks, works, interprets things differently. So all the advice we're giving today can really be applied to neurotypical people too. The only difference is neurotypicals are typically more adept at adapting to the norm. So we struggle more to adapt to the norm, but it doesn't mean that neurotypical people could be doing a better job, be more productive in their workplace if they were also taking in their managers and coworkers were taking into account the things we're talking about today. So that whole equity, not equality thing, looking at an individual level, what does this person need to thrive in their environment the most? That it's not going to be the same as the person sitting next to them, especially in the case of neurodiversity, where we think different, we behave different, we interpret things different. It's not easy for us to just be able to flip a switch and say, oh, well, this is how it's done, I'm just going to have to accept it. It's so much harder. So the big thing is just communication with the employees, learning what works for them at an individual level, instead of thinking about what works for the majority of the population.
Nathan, did you want to take that as well?
Sure. I would say both are needed. It reminds me that the first time we meet people, we get labeled, that label is stuck on us with super glue. We need to tear down the wall that these labels bring and the harmful stereotype that separate us, because only then can we have both equity and equality.
Robert, would you agree with that, Robert?
Yeah, I was saying in the chat earlier that your presentation took a lot of fire out of my answers. It was like when I was looking at the equality and equity issue, I'm not going to repeat some of the other stuff we've already heard here, but accommodations for team members' limits will empower them to reach their full potential. It could be anything such as task checklists, noise canceling headsets, fluorescent filtering glasses, or even a never-ending supply of sticky notes with a board to place them on. Like Megan had mentioned, there are people who are more visually in tuned to how they see and learn things. Some are more auditory, and some absorb by reading. And I think we all have different layers of giftedness or limitations that we try to adapt. And like you were saying, the education and the training that we see growing up and in the workplace, because of funding, they try to make it the same across the board. It's easier to push out that way. But if you looked at your team and got feedback as to what their needs are, then you actually might save some money, because you could target only the training that person really needs to do the stuff that they're passionate about. They may not need to be trained up the yin yang, because you're spending a lot of money putting butts in seats when you don't need to. That person may be ecstatic at what they're doing, and they want to do that the rest of their life because they may feel they're the best one to do that. They don't need training and all this other stuff. So we need to think of that too. There are a lot of ways that you can save money with your team by using equity rather than equality.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things I did mention earlier with these kind of kick-ins that sometimes happen, like, why are they getting it and I'm not? So sometimes I think some of this stuff is best done behind closed doors in a way to prevent that. But I was really interested in something that Megan was saying earlier on about toxicity almost, and Robert and Nathan, when we don't get those things we need, how impactful they are. But you were talking about how what's good for a neurodivergent person is also the same with a neurotypical person. And it reminded me of this story that was actually somebody with menopause, and I'm old enough for that to be relevant now. But she was saying she couldn't get a desk fan because she was told by her managers that desk fans were only for pregnant people when they were too hot. And I was like, seriously? She said, yeah, I had to do a business case. And I'm like, how did that make you feel? She said, like I wanted to leave. I was like, yeah, I can get that. So, that, I suppose that what I'm saying is, because you were saying that neurotypical people might be more resilient to changes, maybe they're more resilient to toxicity too. Maybe we're kind of big canaries in a coal mine. So maybe if we're feeling something's toxic, maybe that's a canary in a coal mine effect for the business. Should be looking at how they talk to all of their people. So that would be interesting.
I wanted to add to that. I think that because I've worked in government tech for so long, I've noticed that a lot of my neurotypical friends are so much more willing to bend or break the rules in order to adapt. Where the whole Scotty and Captain Kirk, I need it fixed in 3 days, and you tell them it'll take 2 weeks, and if you do it in a week, that's fine. But don't keep telling them you can do it in 3 days, because they have no idea how long it takes. That just trains them to want more and more and more. Neurotypicals, I think, will bend the rules and break the rules to fill that need, while we seem to have more of a need to follow the rules you created and the laws you've created, because we see the ramifications of breaking those, the safety, the death, the catastrophe things that go around in your head. And I think that's where we have to come together and everyone slow down this whole fast pace and everything in our lives and do things by the numbers, do things step by step, so everyone can learn how to do it right and feel empowered.
So Megan, because of what you mentioned in terms of making everybody a better place to be, what practical tips for improving retention and recruitment would mean the most to you?
I think I kind of always say when it comes to this is we could have a checklist, we could have a list of recommended accommodations, but because we differ so much, I think the biggest thing is communication. If somebody will communicate with me, that's the easiest way, especially since you hear the word accommodations, and somebody said it in the panel. There's a question on it that I'm sure will come up later about what about when businesses say they don't have the resources for accommodations? Accommodations, the word comes with this heavy implication. When someone says accommodations, you start thinking about the physical disability side of accommodations. Oh, we have to, install ramps. We have to do this. We have to do that. We have to adhere to ADA laws, all of that. And so the thing with us is when we say accommodations, we're not talking about business expenses or resources or things like that. We're talking about accommodate the fact that our brain doesn't work well after 4 p.m. So adjust our 9 to 5 shift to 8 to 4. What is that doing to your business in terms of cost? There's some really great publications out there about the cost of accommodations with neurodiversity, and it shows that the costs actually aren't that large in terms of the dollar amount, but we just have this negative connotation with the words accommodation from a business perspective. So it's important that instead of accommodation, I like to think about communication. Opening that communication and discussion and understanding is the biggest thing.
Maybe it should be what are your enablers rather than accommodations.
Yes, exactly.
So Nathan, what would you say in terms of what makes you want to stop in a business?
Okay, sure. First, make accommodations available in interviews. When I interviewed for my current employer, when I got the email about the interview, there was this nice big bright button on the email saying, if you need accommodation interview, hit this and tell us what you need. That was the first employer I've ever seen that has that. Second, look at what people can do instead of what they cannot do, because all too often in interviews it's like running a gauntlet, and essentially they're trying to shoot you down. What can you do wrong so we can eliminate you? It should be the opposite. What can you do to help the business? Third, instead of judging based on answers to questions, let people show you what they can do. So instead of saying, tell us your strengths and weaknesses, how about putting in front of them a little demo or a computer saying, show us how you can do X. I think you'll see a lot better results.
Yeah, many times I've had conversations with people that go, traditional interviews are not a skills test, they're a popularity contest. So that sucks for some people. Robert, do you have anything to add?
I was
Sorry,
just going to
Megan.
say, like what Nathan was saying, I had an interview, especially for cyber, with a neurodiverse person. Instead, give them a laptop and say, find me everything that you can find on such and such a topic that they know nothing about. And in 15 minutes, they'll give you a book's worth of information because they know how to look for stuff, because they're always overachieving, I think, trying to find things to prepare themselves before a course, prepare themselves before a meeting, maybe nervous about not knowing everything they need to know about that kind of thing. And that would be the big difference. One of the things I wanted to bring up for the whole recruitment and retention is that I think that employers and team members should focus on finding their ikigai, their reason to come into work each morning. It's a Japanese term for a person's sense of purpose. And it doesn't matter if you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. If we focused on that, then you'll have a team of people who can't wait to get into work. They're excited about what they're doing.
I love that. And I'm just going to share this with you because I'm such a literal language person that when you first said ikigai, I misheard you. And I thought, oh, the guy that nobody likes that gets in the way of diversity and inclusion, and we just get rid of him and then it'll all be better. So I love that because it made me smile on multiple levels. But you're right, we do need to, everybody needs to thrive. Everybody needs to feel included. Megan, you were going to say something earlier. Did we miss it?
Oh, it was just about Nathan. I think it was Nathan's comment on practical putting someone in front of a keyboard and seeing their skills. There are Specialist Turn, which is a company IBM works with, that works on getting neurodiverse individuals, specifically autistics, jobs. That's one of the things they push for is their hiring process, interview process involves actually having the person do the job essentially, as a way, almost like an internship, but being able to show what the person does when they're actually in the role, not how they do being interrogated in a room full of strangers, which for a lot of autistics is not the way that they're going to get a job, being sat at a table with 5 people they don't know asking questions as if it's an exam. So that has been proven, like that neurodiverse individuals, autistics especially, will thrive in an environment where they can just show their skills as opposed to sit through an interview, which Jennifer has pointed out that Specialist Turn actually has a representative talking to us later. So you'll get to hear more about that.
Fantastic. I don't know how we're doing with time, but what I'm going to do, because I think we're doing okay, is see if anybody has any kind of one things or takeaways that they really want to bring forward, and then maybe we can ask if there are any questions that people want to ask of us, if that's okay with everybody. Yep. So just going around in sort of Nathan, Megan, Robert, what are your one things? And I'm just going to throw one thing in before I do that. So one of my one things is diversity includes neurotypical people. And I have noticed that there's a lot of stuff at the moment where people are starting to silo neurodivergent people into the team over there. And I think that isn't always a productive thing to do. So that would be my one thing. Nathan?
Sure. Actually, if you looks like we are ahead of time, but I want to throw out the first thing would be we are all different. There's literally no such thing as normal. And number 2, the most critical point, especially for being a neurodivergent working in a workplace, is the relationship with the manager. So the manager is critical to the failure or success of a neurodivergent worker. And I like what you said earlier, is like the sad reality is for managers, there's just so much division. You have to manage people of multiple criteria, so to speak. It goes across the board. There's LGBTQ plus, there's race, ageism, and there's so many various criteria. At the end of the day, it's not rocket science. We don't have to make it that difficult. All manager has to do is ask, what do you need as an individual to thrive in your job? And that crosses across the spectrum of all those criteria.
Absolutely. Megan, feel free to kind of do the one thing, but and expand that, because we do have time to do that before we ask some questions.
Yeah, I know there's like an insane number of questions too, but
yeah.
So I guess kind of my one thing that's always bothered me, I guess, but it's because like I'm on the opposite side of things. Culturally, neurodiverse individuals and how I'm taught to mask is you don't bring up personal uncomfortable topics. So I find that one of the biggest issues that blocks communication is my coworkers and managers feel like they can't point something out or ask something because it's inappropriate. Like they can't say, hey, you were doing this thing or saying this thing that it was kind of odd or it made us uncomfortable. Like, what can we do to adjust that, to fix that, whatever? And because it's just like, oh, you shouldn't bring up people's issues, or, oh, they're being weird, I can't just point it out. Whereas a lot of the times the thing about me is I don't know I'm doing something wrong. I don't know that I'm offending someone or that I need to be working differently. And so your uncomfortableness not bringing something up is inhibiting my ability to learn and improve. I'm here to learn too. I'm not telling, like, part of this also is like people think, oh, like we're telling you have to work like we work and adjust fully. There's things I realize that I can learn and I can do to adjust to your environment. I want to be met halfway. I realize that this world is never going to be a world that was designed for me. I'm asking you to meet me halfway so that I don't have to immerse myself in your world, but I get to feel comfortable in my world too. And so I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to learn if I said something wrong, did something wrong. But if you just feel like you can't bring it up, that's an issue. So on that communication point, I am never offended. Like, I don't think I've ever had someone say something to me that I just got offended and I was like, why would you ask that? I'm typically the one doing the offending because I have no filter. Notoriously, as an autistic, I will ask you any question or say anything to you without a filter. So I'm happy to take the same in exchange. So along the lines of communication, but specifically removing that uncomfortableness of I can't bring it up because that's their thing, I can't point it out. Like people don't want to ask someone about a way they look due to a physical disability. We tend to bring it the same to neurodiversity. If you realize something's wrong with me, you don't want to bring it up. But I want you to bring it up. I want to learn what I'm doing and how I can adjust to meet you at that halfway point. So we just got to get more comfortable, normalize talking about it. I make sure I do that in my everyday life when I'm at the gym talking to people or coworkers at a bar. It doesn't really matter if I could slide like, oh, haha, that's my autism there or something. Just like, and sometimes people do get uncomfortable, like, oh, she's bringing up a disability, like, this is weird, what am I supposed to say, am I sorry, like, but for me, I'm just like, I want to normalize it. I want you to ask me questions too.
I actually had, after my diagnosis, which was late, somebody, I said, he said, oh, I saw you diagnosed as autistic on social media. He said, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And he said, yeah, I'd never, if you hadn't told me, I'd never have pegged you as autistic. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I'll try and be more disabled for you. He said, that's rude. I said, winning. So it's kind of a little bit like that. And I'm sure that you sometimes feel like gifting to your managers radical candor that lovely book about directness.
So ironically, at IBM, we have like culture awards, and I have won the Radical Candor Award, which I thought was hilarious. And I told my team, oh, so you nominated as the one who says what everyone wants to say but won't. And I've also gotten that from coworkers. They've told me they actually appreciate me being the one in meetings to say what everyone was thinking, but no one would say to a manager. So it'll get me in trouble at times, but definitely people see the value of radical candor when it does happen.
Yeah, I suspect that Robert will join in now and tell us how he is indeed the one on in meetings that would be gifted with the same award.
I go out of my way to tell people, don't worry about telling me, okay, you can shut up now, or you've gone on too long, because I'll get all excited about sharing. My verbal diarrhea will come out, and whether you want to learn it or not, they'll be like, oh, look at this, look at that, look at this. And then time goes by like this, and so I don't want them to feel uncomfortable and say, okay, that was great, but we have to get moving on. That's why you're here, Nicola. But my takeaway, I think, is this whole, I want people to strive to find their ikigai, to find your purpose in life, to get up and tackle the day. For me, I have to take notes for this stuff. Personally, as an old-time nerd, I don't live to learn, I learn to live, to help others, to teach my kids, to be prepared, and to set an example for others to follow. What's your ikigai? And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I kind of want to now let people answer what they want to answer from all those questions. Steph, are you coming to tell us to shut up?
No, we have 12 minutes left. So I'm actually
awesome.
coming to let you know some of the questions that have been asked.
Because one of the questions, because I definitely want to get some of those questions out. One of them that I wanted to ask about was somebody on there said about navigating interpersonal relationships on a 9-to-5, which also made me think about this whole concept of going back somehow in some way to this previous way of working before COVID happened. And I really would love everybody's views on what you'd like that new workplace to look like. Is it the same as it is now, for example? I kind of loved working in COVID, by the way. So yeah. Feel free to just, I think we're in free flow now, so feel free to.
I think the whole working from home has shown people that neurodivergent people can be even more productive working in their comfort zone, working from home remotely, how much we've learned about the technology, how much we've learned without the distractions, whether it be sight, sound, whatever, other people at work laughing and joking all the time while you're trying to focus on something. So I'm hoping that we can do a lot more of this, maybe half weeks, maybe go into work 1 day a week for meetings. Companies will realize they can save money. They don't have to expand their offices as they're hiring more people. But I don't know what the rest of you felt about, because I've been doing this for over 2 years now.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and I think what Robert said about there's a big debate right now, like what's better for everyone, the office or working from home? And my answer is you need both. You need the flexibility, because quite frankly, like working from home, for me, it's great and all, but I think I do miss the human interactions like once in a while, like kind of like what Robert said, like it'd be great to have the flexibility, go to the office maybe 1 day a week. But a key for employers is to offer that flexibility for everyone and not enforce one way or the other.
Okay, I'm going to move on to some questions that are, I'm going to say they're the more difficult questions that we've probably all faced at some stage. So one of the questions is how I've been with the company for some time. but they've never mentioned that they are neurodivergent. They don't hide things amongst their co-workers, but they've never had that formal conversation. So how do they start it? There's any, feel free to share your own experiences.
I think there's still a lot of prejudice towards that. I think that some people think that we might use it as an advantage over them, as an advantage to take a job away from someone else. And so there, I think, are a lot of people that still are undiagnosed, don't want to get tested. They think this is the way I am. I'm not broken. You don't need to fix me, blah, blah, that kind of mentality. Rather than looking at this as sometimes I need to have certain accommodations because, for instance, autism, there is a medical side to it. You can be born with enzyme deficiencies that affect my enzyme deficiencies from genetic mutations cause either the inability to filter out chemicals or the ability to absorb vitamins and minerals that add to the health of my lungs. So I have asthma. And so there are physical things that happen to you when you're born with autism that are invisible to others. So you need certain accommodations where you have to go to doctor appointments more often, or you can't focus very well without certain medications because of your body's overuse of B vitamins, and you get hyperactive or anxiety, stuff like that, right?
So Robert, so what I'd like to bring that round back to is that comment that we had earlier with Megan, which is everybody has things they need to thrive, and irrespective of whether that's asthma from serving your country overseas and being affected by something, or something you were born with as a co-condition. This is all kind of reinforcing really that my personal thing I would always say, if you're raising something that you think they may be either touchy because you're neurodivergent, or they might be touchy because you hadn't mentioned it earlier, is often that employers are a lot more accommodating than you might think. There's often a lot of fear of the unknown with the whole conversation. But one of the things that I've found is almost universally, when people have that conversation, if it results in a bad outcome, it's probably an organization that would overall be toxic to you long term anyway. So it's better to know that and deal with it. But the better outcomes tend to come when it's framed in a positive way for the employer.
I think there should be a formal health check in all businesses' programs. So you find out what things that person has problems with. This is what points to the whole thing with the mental health lately. A lot of mental health can be caused by issues with diet or sleeping or exercise, these kind of things. So if you have a formal health check where you're checking with everybody what their limitations are, what they need help with, what do they need accommodations with, then everybody's getting that equity of you're part of our family at home and at work, and we want to make sure that you've got everything you need.
What I'm also going to say there, Robert, is that's much easier to say when you're in a position of authority or power, or that you've got skills that people are seeking in the round. It's much harder if you're starting your career and you're in a more competitive environment. There's a bigger fear factor sometimes, which is worthwhile noting for people. I get why people sometimes struggle to disclose or are worried that it might impact their and what I'm saying is, if you do disclose, it's often better to frame it in a, hey, if I do this, then if you do this for me, then I'm going to be more productive, and we can monitor that, and here's some information. There's another really difficult question. I'm picking out difficult questions because that's me. Another kind of question in there was actually about ABA. Now, you don't have to answer this as a member of the panel if you don't want to, but it was kind of, how do you as an autistic person or a neurodivergent person, say in some ways that, you know, ABA is helping new people. And I'm going to say a difficult thing here because the panel's view might differ.
What is
but,
that?
Behavioral therapy, kind of adjusting people so that the children appear more neurotypical. I would say that whoever, to the person who asked that question, a large number of autistic people view ABA as basically saying to your child, you're not good enough as you are. And that's the kindest way of putting it. ABA has had its roots, or some of its roots, in gay conversion therapy. You can do lots of research around this. I would suggest you look at Asan's site for some balanced views from the autistic community. I think we do ABA to ourselves as autistic people in terms of masking and appearing more neurotypical for the benefit of others. But I think that it's a difficult question because there's an assumption in the question that all of us are going to say that it's good. And I don't think that would be the view of everybody. But please answer if you feel comfortable answering on that panel.
I think it comes from the whole fake it till you make it and pretending to be normal and all that kind of stuff. But we run a daycare here. And when you see kids that are lashing out, that are emotionally abrupt in the room or to anyone around them, I think we have to look at what is upsetting them, what is causing that abruptness. We don't need to make them behave like everyone else. We just need to figure out what is bothering them. Why are they in fear, or why are they in anger? These kind of things. And it's not just neurodivergence, it's everybody. And if you take care of those things and figure out what's missing, halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, these things will take care of themselves, and we'll all find a balance to
Nathan?
be happy. You know?
Sorry, Robert.
Yeah.
Nathan?
Yep, I want to chime in. So I would say yes, the default opinion of many of us in the neurodiversity community is ABA as a very negative, horrible thing. But I look at this from multiple points of view. Like, one example is No Chill of Star Trek Deep Space Nine from when I was growing up, where there's this one character named Dr. Bashir, played by Alexander Siddig, who he's a genius, he's super smart. One would even argue that he's probably neurodivergent until he found out that he was struggling in school growing up, and his parents gave him something akin to ABA, where they optimize his brain functions. And he asked his parents straight off, "Why did you do this to me?" And his response, the parents, they said, "You have no idea how hard it is for parents to see their kids struggle." And that is, like, for me, it's like a slap in the face, because I never thought about it from that point of view. Because the sad reality is there's two sides of that coin. On one side, there are many people throughout history who have these conditions, and the world as a whole and historically are better off for the individuals like us. So in one sense, ABA destroys that. But on the flip side, the unfortunate truth is, in some countries and cultures throughout the world, being like us, being neurodivergent like us, can sometimes lead to injury or death. So the unfortunate part is, for ABA, that a lot of people will disagree with me over is, yes, it's horrible, but in certain countries and cultures, if it comes down to your child living or dying, that's gonna be a hard choice for a lot of parents.
Thankfully, we're not here in the UK and in the US in that position. Megan, you can answer on that or not. You don't have to. Feel free to.
I my thing has always been getting in because it is one of those like trigger topics that can start a huge debate, which I sometimes like debates, sometimes don't. My thing with ABA is I didn't go through it. I feel like I was lucky not to go through it, just based on the experiences I have heard. And so I don't like to comment on its effectiveness, how well it works, blah, 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 because I didn't get to experience that and get firsthand experiences. I will say, though, that when a massive proportion of autistic adults advocate against it, both those who went through it and didn't, then it's probably worth the deeper discussion and investigation. So I'll just leave it at that. I can't speak for my own experiences, but yeah, let's listen to those who have.
So I would say that thank you, panel, for allowing me to pick probably the more challenging questions that are more difficult to answer, and I thank you for your trust in answering them, and I hope the people that asked them, you know, it gave you some place to start in terms of looking at that from multiple viewpoints. So yeah, I think that is hopefully good. And thank you, Steph, for allowing us to have this conversation. And hopefully we'll pop over to Slack and you know, be available to other people. And I don't know about the rest of the panel, but if you wanted to hit me up on CyberGoGiver, if there's something you want to ask me outside of public channels, I'm cool with that.